shorthand, I call it sophisticated agency, but it's this idea of, and it's already come up in the discussion today, of the user being in a position of power with the machine, right? How do you get to that place? And I think there are some easy attempts. Like you just say, oh, we'll just teach AI in schools and everybody will understand how to use it. But of course, that's very difficult. I think also at the other end of the spectrum, even highly educated, aware people, we all fall into traps. Anthropomorphization, for instance, this big one of like seeing a spirit or a human inside the machine. We all do it. In fact, when we don't do it, we're not necessarily fully functional in society because we need these heuristics, these shortcuts, right, to be able to interact with each other. So we apply them to the machines. But I do think there's a really interesting design challenge in how you provide that agency to the user in all kinds of different ways. So there's like a sort of alert, this is you are talking to a machine, and maybe the frequency of reminding that. But then there's other elements, like even in the way you present. So the classic, something like GPT will often respond in the first person pronoun, right? It says, I think you are feeling this way, right? I think that's a very big decision that the developers have made that they could easily change to firstly give it a first person pronoun and to allow it to claim the capacity for cognition and things like that, or feelings. So, and these are all things that I think we can choose to help bring people along on the journey. And another one, which just sorry, I don't know the chap's name, to the point there, is I think quite often in user interfaces, the sort of design principle led by the gods of Apple and whatnot is whatever you do, don't give the user any options. Just make it as simple as possible. But I want a little button that says to GPT, you're wrong. Okay, I don't want to have to go to the effort of explaining why it's wrong, but maybe I should have that too. And that feedback loop should be incorporated into its version as it applies to me. And I think through that, the company then gets an unbelievably high volume of very accurate in-context training data for the next version. This is priceless for them, including cultural learning. But I don't know where it is along the design process that they say, whatever you do, don't let the users say go away, you're wrong, or try this instead, or I prefer X, I don't know, I just think it's another thing that we can consider in this localization challenge.
ChatGPT, they're doing it very smartly now. And they're talking about reinforcement learning with human feedback.
Yeah.
This is something new that is coming on. And what they're doing right now, when you ask it a question, it provides you multiple responses.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
you
it does,
select which
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So it does it in a smart way to say, okay, you like this rather than this,
Yeah.
but why is that?
Yeah.
It's trying to figure out in small algorithm.
Yeah.
So they're trying to bring human into the low bracket and to improve their models.
Yeah.
I have a question. How would they be incentivized to do that? Perhaps that would be getting because that's always the best way of getting the corporate world to embrace something is to incentivize it, or but I don't know how that would work.
I think there are ways, like even just demonstrating through the feedback that it's improving the product for the person and they're getting a better experience.
It's
That
so
should
easy
be
and
something.
black and white, and it's surprisingly that it's not the case.
Yeah, really. It's something going on.
Can I ask you a question that's related to that? And you're saying is incentivization for the corporate side, but also the incentivization for the user. So in the previous workshop we had, there was a big complaint from some of the delegates that people in Tanzania were providing their data, improving these models to help international companies. So would you see that as a problem? Or do you think that that's okay as long as the product is getting better?
No, I don't think that the problem is the giving of the data, but is it being used as he mentioned earlier to localize the content you're finding, right? That is the sweet spot, right? Because it seems like they're just data mining so that they know what we like and then just shove stuff on our faces. But if they were actually, I guess that's what actually answers your question, that their output is just as messy, so I wouldn't be surprised that their input internally, maybe they're not incentivized to make it more specific. It works better when it's messy. Then it can just pick up a bunch of random things from different places. So it provides the illusion of competency without actually being competent. So I think that's where these guys are sort of, it's like a narcissist. If you're not sure, you might think they're a very confident person, and that's how, like, yeah, like, that's how, like,
Perfect.
psychologists would differentiate that a narcissist, you might think they're a very confident person, but they're not. So it's like, how do you?
Very capable.
Yes, they're very capable. So that's the same as what I'm seeing with the artificial intelligence, because it appears like super competent, but its competent levels are very childlike, if you think about it.
But again, I think that there is a design choice there, because you could filter the output to be less narcissistic, to look for features around that. And the likes of like Claude by Anthropic, they try to be a little bit more kind of human centric, whatever. And likewise with the another sort of psychological sort of issue is sycophancy, right? It's like always playing to the user. And saying like, oh yeah, you're great, and always providing a response. But maybe sometimes it should respond to saying, look, it's enough.
Don't you
Go outside, get some fresh air, talk to your family. I'm going away for a while.
Yes, like when it tells you, like, I think you've watched enough videos on YouTube,
exactly.
maybe you should enjoy some sun.
So again, this is where it comes back to this strong weak empathy, because it's not actually worried about the user, it wants to maintain the engagement.
It's efficiency.
But to clarify as well, on that point of weak and strong, I think Alex did say this, but I'll emphasize that this idea of weak empathy in this sort of, as a term, doesn't mean that it's worse than empathizing. Because there are, in some very practical ways, like we've seen genuine positive outcomes from therapy and things like that. And even like people, many cases we've seen of people interacting with their model to ask it questions about how they should manage their relationships. Like, for instance, practicing before you engage with your partner. That, I think, makes a lot of sense. Like, some people aren't very good at finding ways to say difficult things to their partners or their boss or whatever. Right, so in that way, that's a form of, like, very powerful empathy. And it can be very convincing, but yeah, it has no experience, as you say.
I have an interesting observation. Maybe if you guys could. When I'm with, I think it's a communication problem as well. Because one thing we know as humans, we're very lazy at communication. So let's put the blame on our feet first. Because I've noticed, like, I have this similar thing when I have my meetings in the office, like on the weekends. Somebody gives me information. Tell it this happened, this happened. And then I look at them. The reason I would say that is that, what is it you would like me to do as your boss? What is the action of a thing that you would like me to do? Or are you just dumping this information to me? I think that this is also similar to how we are using the AI. You understand, right?
Yeah, very good.
Because I could come here and just say some vague things about certain things. But I know exactly what I want. And humans, we do that to each other. I know what I want from you. And then I know why she's pissed off, maybe, but she won't say it. So I also feel like maybe, I don't know how research and some of the computer guys would, because if it prompts back more questions to the user, as you said, perhaps that would actually also clarify. So if I'm speaking to, let's say I'm speaking to I'm mentoring a young startup person. My job is just, if they're being vague, I just simply ask them, so what are you saying? So what is this? So what is that? So that it actually gets to where we're at. And I don't know how you can link that with the development and the use.
Have you used the deep research function on ChatGPT?
I have.
Because it is.
So I use it very heavily, so I started to appreciate, because like I hate vague speech. So whenever I speak to, even whether it's my daughter or the people in my office, I always say, you're sending an update to the client. What are you telling the client? Is this some vague information that you went to some government information and checked from their case? What did you find about their case? What was the fact? What does the client need to know? What does the client have to know? But it's human nature. So I think the AI is also adopting the human nature of just giving us the first instance is a vague answer. You know, so maybe it's testing us, and we just need to be more clear in the information we're trying to seek out from the world.
But let's think about how humans are controlled
Yeah.
to maybe wrong things. So it's about enforcing. So we need to think about how we can enforce to the AI now. Because we let AI do whatever the things that are being again teach, then we go viral. So what we need to do, I think that there must be the sense of control. There must be the enforcement to the AI. Whether the person who develop the AI or maybe we need to know who gives the information to the AI. Let's need to go beyond the control so that we can be
I think that's a good segue, isn't it, into the next. Should we do that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
This is a, and as mentioned already, I think if we never get past the next slide, but we have a lively discussion, we have succeeded, right? But I can briefly talk us through the approach taken to the development of standards in this space, which feeds into the idea of enforcement. But we should also look more broadly at standards are just one part of this. But anyway, I'll talk that through it. So, I will assume that there's maybe at least one person in the room who's not familiar with standards in general, and then just start from the top.
I'll try and figure out a way.
So, for quite a long time,
Can you make it from that point, or would you like to come from? Can you make your presentation properly from that point where you are? Yeah. Or will you come?
okay, over here. Okay. I'm fine here. Everybody is.
Okay, you are comfortable. Fine.
Yeah. And the slides are not important. It's just the title of the slide, so you can note it for future. But I can explain. And please ask questions as well, because I will be keep it quite shallow. But so there are, along with laws, policy, and so on, and kind of guidelines, somewhere in between is this area of soft law, which includes standards, where we would be familiar with various technical standards, like the lighting in this room and the wiring. Hopefully, all conforms to some. Depends who put it there. Conforms to some international standard. Let's see, the Wi-Fi router up there. That's a well-known IEEE standard. There are various bodies that develop standards and manage them, and they can be at international level, global. They can also be industry specific. They can be specific to particular areas. And so the quality and acceptability of different standards is not necessarily like a pure kind of hierarchy up to the international developers. There are many different good and bad standards. But in the global standards development organizations, the two big players are the IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and the ISO, which is even more famous, I would say, an international standards organization. But the IEEE decided to take the lead on a new group of standards, which were, rather than technical or process standards, like Business 9001 is a famous process standard. You should do this and this, this and this. They started to develop ethical standards in the space of AI. And my boss and I at the startup a few years ago were just in the right place at the right time. We were kind of invited to help set up the ethical standard as it applies to empathic AI, emotional AI, whatever you want to call it, right? This technology we're talking about. And after 5 years of deliberation, we published the standard in June last year. So you can access it for free. It is actually available for free download. You're not supposed to use it commercially without paying for the standards, but you can access it and look at it, which is a new thing as well. They've experimented with open standards. And if you do get a chance to read it, critical